holding on the bottom of 28b3. Literally, we're really on the dot. We're on the.
I already started. Go ahead.
So we're on the last. We're on the last line. Okay. I don't know if Charlie is. Charlie, you there?
Charlie was here. He was. I think he was having. No, he's not here. He was there, but I think he's having problems. He's having problems with his Wi-Fi because he was talking to me earlier and he was jumping in and out.
Okay, so we'll start. We'll start and he'll catch
Go
up. No problem. He's ahead anyways. So very good. So we go further and we're going to have a very interesting Gemara. It's an easy Gemara today, and it's going to have a lot of practical things in life. Amar Rab Nachman, Zuhamo de Shimsha, the heat of the sun, Koyim Shimsha, on a cloudy day is stronger than the heat on a clear day. And that's because when it pierces through the clouds, it obviously pours right through the clouds. In other words, the idea being here, it's that it's a much more muggier day and the effects of the heat are much worse. The simach dedona dechala, and the simon of this is a jar of vinegar. Rashi explains, you cover up a jar of vinegar, the smells build up in the jar. So if you poke a hole in the opening, the smells will dissipate, come out very strongly. Now, Shivrire the Shimsha Kashumi Shimsha. The blinding effects of looking at the sun as it bursts through the clouds is stronger than the look on the sun on a clear day. The sim of Dilpa, and the sim of this is Dilpa, meaning the Chinese water torture. Look at the last Rashi on the page. Koshan Dolav Hayorein ala Adam Mishim Nichnas al Kufe Lamayim. It's much worse for a man if you get drip that falls on a person than if you throw the water completely on it, i.e. the Chinese water torture, where they drop water, drip on a person's forehead, and the pressure builds up tremendously. And we all know that you're not supposed to look at the sun when it comes out of an eclipse, when it's breaking through the slant clouds, because it hurts the eyes. Very good. We're on today's Daf 29A1. 29A1. And now this becomes something that's very interesting. Harure Aveira Koshume Aveira. Thoughts of an Aveira are worse than the Aveira itself. And the reason for this is, for the obvious reasons, is that the Taibis Noshim, says Rashi, Taibis Noshim Koshim Lahakish as Besari Yoitzimi Gufot. The thought process drives you crazy. Anticipation is always worse than reality. So the Hirar Aveira is actually worse than the Aveira. Now that doesn't mean that obviously a Hirar Aveira, it does not mean in actuality with regard, obviously doing an Aveira is much worse. But for the body, for the person, it drives a person crazy psychologically. And that's what the Gemara is saying. Your thought processes, you are where your mind is. So make sure your mind is where you want it to be. Is the best way of looking at this Gemara. The simonech, and the simach for this is reicha de bisra, the aroma of roasting meat. Obviously, if a person can't have the meat and he smells the meat, his type for the meat is much greater. And Shilo de Ka Kosha de Mekaite, the end of the summer is worse than the beginning of the summer. We see Mana Taruna Sheep Kira, a heated oven. A heated oven heats up even faster when you want to reheat it. Oh, sorry, just give me 1 second. My allergy, bad allergy day. And Ishto de Sisfa Kasha. A winter fever is worse than a summer fever. The simonech tenura kirira, and if you to remember, it is a cold oven. A cold oven takes much more longer time to heat up. When you have to go ahead, it doesn't retain its heat as easily as a heated up oven. A person in the winter that's burning up with fever is much worse than obviously somebody that's in the summer. And we go like this further. Relearning old forgotten information is harder to remember The simach tino bartino is cement made from old cement. Obviously, this is what Pirkei Avos says. While an older person appreciates their learning and has greater depth in the learning because he has a lifetime of experience, nonetheless, he doesn't compare to new paper, to new niyar, which obviously retains things better and has a greater excitement, etc., what it's doing. Back again to what we learned before, the Rebbe, that the shaft of sunlight diffuses in all directions. Amar Abavu, my time at the Rebbe, for the conductor about the morning deer. Ma ayala zu, just like this hind meaning the deer. Kane maflios, lakana, its antlers branch off from here to there. Avshaka zu matzri lakana, so the light of the morning diffuses from here to there. Amar Rav Zera, lama nimshal Esther la ayala. Why is Esther compared to a deer, to a hind, a young hind? If you look on the side of the Gemara, Rashi, Lama Nimshal Esther Ayolos. If you look in the article, it's at the bottom, towards the bottom of the Lakute Rashi. The bottom towards the Lakute. The Mesechtes Megillah, Daf Tezvav Amid Beis, I'm reading on. The Esther Omrat Mizma Zeh. Esther said this Mizma, Melametzech Alayeles Hashakar, Chiven Sheigil Beis Hatzalmonim Nistalkia Menu Shchina. That's when she was going to Achashverosh. You have to understand the story of Esther going to Achashverosh is wrought with great things. She said, Achashverosh has not been to me for 30 days. And she told Mordechai, how can I go? I'll be killed if I'm not called to the king. What she was really saying that Mina Shemayim, if according to the Medrash that says that Esther in fact was married to Mordechai, so every time Achashverosh came to Esther, Esther, of course, was an oinus. She was unavoidable. But now Mordecai was asking Esther to go to Achashverosh. That changes everything. Now she would be amazed with regard to the Avera of Ashes Ish. She's a married woman to Mordecai. And she's deliberately leaving her palace to go to Achashverosh. That's what she meant when she told Mordechai, I'll be killed, meeting Mina Shemayim. And Mordechai said to her, stop worrying about your Olam Haba. Your people need you about to step up to the plate. And that's more important than everything else. And so she went and she was moister nefesh, not only on a physical point of view, that Achashverosh might kill her because he had not called her, but also on a spiritual point of view, that she, for the first time, was approaching Achashverosh willingly, which would make her chaya for Ashes Ish. So she was saying the Tehillim Lama, she should light up the morning for her, and all of a sudden the Shekhinah left her. And so she said, Amra, Kayli, Lama Zaftoni, Hashem, why have you left me? Why have you abandoned me? Which is part of the Tehillim of Lamatzech Halayelas Hashachar. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Zera, we get 29A1, the left-hand column. Good morning, Charlie. Lama Nimshal Esther La'ayola. Why is Esther compared to a hind? To tell you just that the hind has a narrow womb. And she's desirable to her mate every time because she's tight. Rishona, so too the first time, as she was the first time. Of Esther, Esther was desirable to Achashverosh every time he saw it, like the first time that he saw it. So before we go further, as you can see from these Gemaras, sometimes the Gemara is very quite graphic. And it's jarring because we think of the Chazal as high on a mountain, tucked away. How could they be talking about this? But The point here is again a point that Chazal makes over and over and over again. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it, and this is life, Zui Torah v'tzarech lamadata. If this is life, and it is here, and it's good, it's from Hashem, and it's Torah, and it needs to be learned. And it does not matter whether it jars us in its expressiveness, in its explicitness. That is the way the Gemara says that's nonsense. The Torah is there and it's meant to be learned. The life is there, and it's from each aspect of life. There you find the Rebbeinu Shalom, and you have to find its lessons. So let's go further. It says the Gemara, we're now in the right-hand corner of 29a1. Amar Rav Asi, Lama Nimshul Esther L'Shachar. Why is Esther compared to the morning? Just as the morning is the end of the entire night, with Esther entered all the miracles. So pray to Gemara Chanukah. Chanukah might come earlier in the calendar, but Chanukah happened 300 or so, 250 years later. So the Gemara, we're talking about those that would be canonized in the Tanakh. The book of Esther is canonized in the Tanakh. The story of Chanukah is already not. In fact, we would not even know about the miracle of Chanukah except that the Gemara in the Sechta Shabbos Daf Chaf Aleph on the base happens to talk about it for about 2.5, 3 dafim. Outside of that, we would have no clue what Chanukah is. So says the Gemara, that's good if you say that Esther was was canonized into the Tanakh. But in Masechtas Megillah, there is a Mandama that says the book of Esther was in fact not canonized. What were you trying to say here? Says the Gemara, the Rabbi Yomi bar Yefes, Rabbi Elazar. The Rabbi Yomi bar Yefes, Rabbi Elazar, why is the tefillah of the righteous compared to a hint? If you take a look at the Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines before it gets wide, before the Rashi gets wide, it says the high shachar loshen tefillah, because the morning shachar is a loshen of tefillah. Like Yeshaya said, like the ruach that comes to me in the morning. So Rashi is explaining that we find in different places in the Nach that the word shachar is tied to the word tefillah. So says the Gemara, just like this hint, as long as it's growing, its antlers branch off. That's what the Rashi at the end is saying. So to the tzaddikim, as long as they persist in tefillah, tefillos and nishmas, the tefillos will be heard. The article uses the word saying that you shouldn't feel like you're bothering the Rebbeinu Shalom. Yitzchak Avinu and Rivka davened for 20 years straight, every day, every tefillah for children. The Rebbeinu Shalom has a great love for the tefillim shel tzaddikim. And here's the facts. We are now in this diaspora, in this golus, longer than the entire time from Avram Avinu to Churban Bayesheni. From Avram Avinu to Churban Bayesheni is about 1,800 years. We have now passed that in this diaspora. That any Jews are going to shul and davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, though it has been asta upon him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been hidden from us. The hand of Hashem is not as easily seen today as it was in yesteryear. And nonetheless, we still go to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu 3 times a day. It makes all of us tzaddikim. How many of us, if you think about it, in a world of 7 billion people, how many Jews every day are going to daven 3 times a day? 1 million? 1.25 million? Every day. How many men are putting on tefillin every day? 1.25 million. When we say that we are the sheres hapleto, the remnants of a remnant of our people, it's true. We are a remnant. You know that Orthodox Jewry coming out of World War II, there was approximately 50,000 Orthodox Jews in the entire world in 1945. And today, Baruch Hashem, we're well over 2 million, which seems like a very small number until you realize in 76 years how fast we have grown. But that's the point. So the point is, Ach tzadikim kol zaman shamar ben betfilah, tfilos and nishmas, the tfilos are heard. And that's something, don't take your tfilos lightly. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dying to hear our tfilos, and keep banging away. Don't worry about it. You don't bother the Eibushin. He loves it when we daven to it. 29:8:2. 29:8:2. The Mishnah says further. Shachtu es atomit. If they made a mistake and they assumed that the dawn had happened, and in fact it was still night, but they got mixed up between the moonlight and the sunlight, or the rays that were coming over the horizon but hadn't broken yet at dawn, and they slaughtered the tamid, then they had to go ahead and burn it. So Freiti Gemara, Amos, when did this happen? If you want to say it happened throughout the year, then why is the Mishnah pointing out that the Kohen Gadol is the one that performed it? It doesn't have to be the Kohen Gadol. It could be the Kohen Gadol, but it could be any Kohen throughout the year. So you want to say it was Yom Kippur that the Kohen Gadol, when the Kohen Gadol has to do all the avodas, why there would be no problem of the moonlight at close to dawn at that time of the month. The only time of the month that you should have this problem is at the beginning of the month, when the moon is rising anew over the horizon. When the observer that climbed up to check for the dawn said dawn has begun, Hayridu Kohen Gadol lebeis hatfilah, it meant that we take the Kohen Gadol down to the place of immersion. But it doesn't mean that this business with the making up a mistake of shachtu as atomid while it was still night has anything to do with the Kohen Gadol. It's only afterwards, in fact, what we're trying to say with regard to the dawn. When they call and they say the dawn has begun, that's when we take the Kohen Gadol to the place of immersion, as we learned earlier that he goes to the top of the base of Parvata. Tanu Abu de Rab Oven, the father of Rab Oven, taught a Baraisa. Loizu Bulvadam. Not only do we say that this animal that's being offered at night, do we say it's no good, it must be burned. Ela af malika sa'oif ukemitzas mincha ba'alayla. So too the malika of a bird and the kemitza of the mincha that's performed at night. Okay, that's then tisaref has to be burnt. Just give me 1 second. I just want to see over here. Okay, yeah. So it says the Gemara. Bishlema oila sa'oif. Okay, I can understand the oila sa'oif. What happened? In other words, you slaughtered the oif, you slaughtered it at night, you can't make it up. It's dead. So you got a problem, you got to burn it. But the minchas kaimitz, what did you do? You picked up the kaimitz while it was nighttime. We're now on Amid days 29b1. Spread the Gemara Nahada. Let the Kohen simply return the flour to the pan containing all the flour of the mincha, and then turn around and pick up the kamitza again by daytime. This is similar to the question we had yesterday with regard to the wood on the mizbeach. If he made a mistake of putting down the wood at night, simply lift it up and then put it back down when it's daytime. Same thing over here. Says the Gemara, who Tanale, who Amalei. Rav Ovid taught the Brisa and then he explained it himself. Clay shores magdishin afilu shaloi bizmanoi. A clay ashores, a serving vessel. If you put something into a serving vessel, it is automatically mekadesh something b'kedushas aguf with physical sanctity, even when it's not in its own time. Since when I put the flour, look, that I scooped up as kamitza into the clay ashores, into the service vessel, even though I did it at night. So it's tussle. It's not, it can't be used. Nonetheless, it already is kodesh by dint of having been immersed within the ear rights of the clay shores. And there's a rule. Something that's haroya labila, kibila dummy. Something that's roya to be used, that's worthy to be used, it becomes holy that to be used. It's as if it was used. I can't use it because it became holy at night. That may very well be, but it's still holy. It still has physical sanctity. So I cannot pick it up and put it back into the original pan that's filled with flour that's not yet holy. Because we're malim b'kodesh ve'emeridim. We go up in holiness and not down. Number two, the rest of the other pan is still tebel because it's not been made holy by a clay ashores. So that would explain why you can't put it back. So on this, says the Gemara Meisvei, Ze'aklal, this is the rule. Kol hakarev b'yoyim kadesh b'yoyim. Anything that is offered by day is sanctified by day. Kol hakarev b'layla kadesh b'layla. And anything that's offered by night is sanctified by night. Okay, that means the mincha that's done at night is when it's placed in a clay ashores, it becomes holy by night. Which the Mefarshim simply and Rashi explains this means that the Brisa is just repeating itself. That means things that are meant to be brought by day are made holy by day, and things that are meant to be brought at night are made holy by night. Tani mias, but regardless, the Brisa says, Kol hakari b'yoyim kodesh b'yoyim in balayla loy. That means it only becomes sanctified in the clay ashores, in the service vessel, by day, but not by night. So since this mincha needs to be brought by day, the fact that it was put, that the kamitza was placed in it, into the clay ashores, it was placed there at night. This Brisa clearly says the clay ashores does not have the power to be mekadesh, only at the daytime when the offering needs to be brought. B'day, b'yoyim in balayla loy. So therefore, your answer that it was put into a clay ashores and became kedushas aguf, physical sanctity at night, does not in any which way, does not work, because in fact, according to this Brisa, it does not become holy at night because the mincha is a daytime mincha. So therefore, the clay ashores only works to be mekadesh only by day. Says the Gemara, no. Dilma ain't a kodesh likore. This Brisa means to say that it's not holy, that it could be brought if it's done at night. Avo kodesh lepaso, but it becomes sanctified to make it invalid. In other words, like we explained before, it can't be used because it was made holy at night, and it was meant to be holy by day. It was done at the wrong time, so that's a solid invalidation. But miyahava, it became holy by being put into the clay ashores. It automatically became holy. Became holy. That is what it is. Rab Zera, and once it became holy, it can't go back. Rab Zera, is that a fact? See, if some, as we all know, on the golden shulchan, you're supposed to put every Shabbos, you replace the old chalas with new chalas. What happens if they messed up and they did it on Sunday? They arranged the challahs and the spoons of the spice of the frankincense on the shulchan after Shabbos on Sunday. The hikdes bezichem b'Shabbos, and the next Shabbos they went ahead. They burnt the bezichem like they were supposed to. Psula, the bread is invalid. Ketzad yasa, what should he do? Yanichu l'Shabbos haba. They should leave the breads for another Shabbos to the next Shabbos afterwards. So now you got a full week, and burn the frankincense on the next Shabbos. Afilu omda ala shulchan yomim ramen, which means that the bread will be sitting on the table not for 7 days, but for 13 days. And the kach there's no problem. Why is there no problem? Also, let the bread become sanctified by the table. It's sitting on the table. The table itself isn't kedushas aguf. The bread should become holy, and since it was placed at the wrong time, it should become no good. There should be no way that you should be allowed to leave it there for 13 days. And that would say, okay, at least we left it there over a complete week from a Shabbos to a Shabbos from day 6 to day 13. It shouldn't work. Says the Gemara, Amarava, Manda Kamosim, Shapa Kamosim. The one who answered up the Gemara's explanation, Rav Zera, we said, well, but Abu the Rav Abed Nami Masis Kama, the father of Abed has a baraisa. So we've got to make this all work. So we've got a problem over here. So how we're going to make it work? And here we're getting to the end of where we're learning today, 29b2. So we must say that the Tana of the Bryce of the father of Rav Ovin holds like this: Laila Eina Mechusas Zaman, that the time frame of light does not render anything premature, but Yoin Mechusas Zaman, but day does render something premature. What are we talking about? If somebody does something at night for something that's needed to be done by day, we all know a Jewish day works a night and a day. Vayi Erev, Vayi Boiker. It was a night and it was a day. So if I do it by night for the following morning, for the following day, it's still part of the same day, according to this parasha. If I do it in that day for something that's needed for the upcoming night, that's no good, because that's 2 different days. And that's what the parasha seems to be saying. Says the Gemara, but what are you talking? But then in that case, when Friday evening arrives, the bread should become sanctified by the table, because Friday night is the beginning of Shabbos, when we normally place bread on the shulchan, the golden table. So the bread that was placed there on Sunday has been sitting there. The moment Shabbos arrives Friday night, it should automatically be kodesh, and now become possible because of Lina. Should become possible because of staying overnight. Since it's last week's challah, it should have been removed. It should have been removed, and it was put on before Shabbos. It was put on a Sunday. The moment it becomes Shabbos, it becomes holy, and it should be possible because it's been Lina. It's been left overnight. Says the Gemara, Mazutra v'Temer Rav Ashi Yoma, Afilu Temer b'Shaloi Kodam b'Silka. You can say that the Kohen did not go ahead and remove the bread from the table. Chivon, oh no, Omer Ravina. I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Omer Ravina Shekodam b'Silka. I'm going to give you the answer. The Kohen went ahead and removed the bread from the table before the nighttime on Friday. The bread was never sanctified. It was never sanctified in the first place, because it can't get sanctified until you get to Friday, until you get to Shabbos. Even if we don't say the Kohen took it off early, since he arranged it not according to its requirements, i.e., on the wrong day, it's as if a monkey arranged it. Since the arrangements are Shabbos to Shabbos, if you do something and you arrange it during a weekday, it's meaningless. It has no value. It's as if it never happened. Very good. We got to the end of the Yoma. We could go a little further, Are you guys up to going for another 10 minutes? You guys, or we could stop here. Charlie, you okay for another 10 minutes?
Sure.
Jerry, you good for another 10 minutes? I'm going to assume yes. Okay, here we go. Be forewarned, this is not the cleanest of Gemaras about to come up. This was the rule of the Mikdash. Anybody who urinated, right, required to wash his hands and his feet. I understand the feet, because of the sparks, meaning the drops that land sometimes on your feet. Why do you got to do your time? We're starting tomorrow's time. Stop, Lamed Amid Aleph. Mitzvah mishafshet. There's a midrabanon. There's a rabbinical decree to rub off any drops of urine that may have landed on one's hands. Since the hands will probably have come unclean, midrabanon, you got to wash off the hands. Messiah Rabami, the Amar Rabami. Also, the Odom Shiotzim ben Itzaitza shall gabe raglav. A person is also to go out in public with droplets of urine on his feet. Because that is going to look like he's a person with a crushed member. Unfortunately, a person that has problems, that has crushed testes and has problem or has cut his member, unfortunately, it does not come out in an arch. The urine does not come out in an arch. It dribbles out. So therefore, if people see it on his feet, they're going to think he has problems. So then they're going to say, how is it possible that he has a house full of kids? And Lamai, his kids must have been born out of wedlock. Okay, we go further. Amar Rav Papa, and again, I refer back to what I said earlier on the doc. The Gemara will look at all human reality, phenomena, and say, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it, there's something to be learned, there are halachas to be learned. If it's part of the world, it's Torah v'tzarech lamadata. Amar Rav Papa, Saya b'mekayma. If after one does a bowel moment, there's still some left in its place, right? Also, likras kriyashma. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Hey, chidami, either nearest, if it's visible, if the excrement is invisible, pshita, obviously you can't say excrement. Either loy nearest, if it's not what it called, then you should be allowed to. The Torah wasn't given to angels. In other words, if there's still something left over in your body, okay, listen, we're human beings. We're not angels. It doesn't work that way, right? It's only if we could see it. And this, by the way, is halacha. If you could see the bugs in the water, then you can't drink it. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. If you go ahead and you go to a laboratory and you can see it in a laboratory, the Torah was not given to the Malachei Hasharis. You don't run our lives that way. We work with the eyes that Hashem gave us. That's the way it is.
So why are we using jeweler loops?
I don't have an answer. In fact, I can show you an Aruch HaShulchan that says straight out regarding bugs in the water. And he says, if you cannot see it with the naked eye, that's what he says. If you cannot see it with the naked eye, it doesn't exist.
So what's about checking an esrog?
Okay, so an esrog, the truth is, when you pick up an esrog and you turn it with your eye and you don't see anything, it's good. It's good. In fact, a lulav is much harder. Kosher lulav is harder to find because most of the time they're split on top until recently. Okay, and they were crooked. The truth is, we are just going Zek Keli Vanveyu. This is my God, and I will beautify it. So we go ahead and we look at it and all that. Let me be honest. We spend big money on lulav and esrog. Jerry knows this once. Charlie, you might know this. If you come onto 13th Avenue, Arab Sukkot, you can buy a lulav and esrog for $10. for $25. You're good. We don't do it. People do it, by the way. With big families, they most certainly do it. But that's just, if you're going to live in Boca Grove, you don't get away with such a low expenditure. You're expected to spend more money on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Simple. The answer to that question is better yet, why do people go crazy about putting filters on their water? If the reason you're putting filters on the water is because of bugs in the water, the truth is, la halacha, that's not the case. It's not the case. It's straight out. The Torah was not given. Look at the question. The Eloi Niris, the Torah. Simple. We're not angels. And in fact, that's what makes us great. We're not angels, and we're still trying to serve the Rabban Yishloim. Says something Gemara. When you're sitting and you can see the excrement, then you can't say Kriya Shema. When he stands and it's not visible, you could say Kriya Shema. Says the Gemara, what's the difference in this case of excrement on one's flesh? If there's soya on one's flesh, or his hands are in the Beis HaKisei. Now, the Beis HaKisei, the lavatory, does not mean our lavatories, by the way. It means an outhouse. To our lavatories, you're going to hear later on, we're going to get to the Lashon in the Gemara called the Beis HaKiseis of the Parsoim, of the Persians. They had a rudimentary system of flushing, of plumbing. They would get rid of their stuff, of their soya. They would flush it down. Our bathrooms, theoretically, you can say Kriya Shema in our bathrooms. We don't, of course, but theoretically, you could, because they're clean. In fact, let's be honest, everybody, what's the most expensive rooms in your house? The bathrooms. The wives spend so much money on the tiling and the garden and the thing. It's some of the most expensive rooms in our house. Anyways, go further. Itma. Soya al b'sarah shoya yoda b'beis hakisei Rabhuna Oma mutter likrois Kriya Shema. It's mutter to say Kriya Shema. Obviously, we're talking about where you don't breathe it. It's not on your nose or mouth or something like that where you can breathe the smell. Right? It's in a place where there is no smell. Rav Chisda Oma also likrois Kriya Shema. So you see, Rav Papa is not like Rav Huna or Rav Chisda. So Zanti Gemara, in its place in the bed. In other words, you took is the smell is substantial. Everybody agrees with Rav Papa. You cannot recite the Shema. When it's not in its place, we're on 38.2. 38.2. When it's not in its place, the smell is not so bad. And then we have a machlokes Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. Rav Huna and Rav Chisda both agree, by the way, that obviously if it's really bad, you can see it, and there's a smell, you can't say Kriya Shema. The real question is if it's covered by clothes. If it's covered by clothes, can you say Kriya Shema not? And that's what they're arguing about. Tanu Rabbanon, halacha b'suda. We have an halacha by suda. Adam yoytz lahashis mayim. If in course of the meal a person goes out to urinate, noitel yodei achatz v'nichnas. He should wash one hand that wipes himself. He should wash that hand and enter to continue the meal. If while he's outside he speaks to a chaver for an extended period of time and delays coming back in to eat the meal, he should wash both hands and enter. Today we wash both hands. You'll notice over here the Gemara does not get into Asher Yotza, because that's not the discussion here, right? That's a discussion in a different Gemara in the spread brachas. We, of course, wash both our hands today. Kishuhu noitel, and when he washes his hand, lo yitul mi b'chutz v'yichnas. He should not wash his hands outside and enter the dining room, because then everybody else will be suspicious that in fact he didn't wash his hands. He should enter and sit in his place, and wash both his hands, and then pass it around and say, by the way, does anybody else need to wash their hands? And by definition, everybody would know that he washed his hands and he's all clean. So this sounds all ridiculous. Unless you realize that we're living in the 20th and the 21st century and we've got running water. In the days of my grandparents, who were born in 1907 in Gross Vidine and in Chust in 1911, where there wasn't running water yet, this was not the situation. They were living without houses. They were living without running water, with water that had to be pulled up from a well. All of a sudden, it's a different ballgame. Today, we take it for granted that we're clean and we're neat and there's no smells and we get sickened by smells. We forget what the world must have been like just 100 years ago. It's different completely. Amar Rav Chisda, Loi Amrin El Lishtos. We said that one must not wash outside only when he intends to drink after he returns. But if he intends to eat, he can wash his hands outside and then enter. Because everybody knows a person has delicate nature and nobody's going to eat his foods without washing his hands. And I wash my hands even just to drink. Because everybody knows that I'm a delicate nature, that even drinking without thing I can't do. Very good, everybody. We are up to the Mishnah. That didn't even take us 10 minutes. I just wanted to get through this part of the Gemara but again, the point here is, and this is just the point that needs to be made constantly, the Torah Kedosha looks at all human phenomena. The Gemara will do this over and over again as we go through all human phenomena and say, it exists, it's part of life, it's therefore Torah, Tzarach Lamadata. It's not think, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, that we get rid of our waste this way, by urinating and defecting, right? There must be a reason. He didn't have to make it that way. It could have simply disintegrated in our bodies. Just use that as an example. But this is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chachmosai, in his wisdom, decided I'm going to do it. If he decided he's going to do it, that means there's a holiness in it. There's something to be learned. There are halachas to be drawn out. To teach us a certain mode of behavior. It's the same reason, if you ever thought about it, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create non-kosher animals? If he only wanted us to eat kosher. Create kosher animals. The answer is HaKadosh Baruch Hu said you won't appreciate kosher animals if I didn't give you non-kosher animals. You wouldn't know the reason why there's bad in the world, because if everything was good, you wouldn't know it was good. You'd say it just is that way. You have the dark in order to appreciate the light. It's always that way. That people need a contrast in order to appreciate things. How do we come to appreciate cleanliness? Because we know what non-cleanliness is like. And that's exactly what this is all about. Anyways, everybody have a wonderful day.